Kia ora e hoa ma. It's Lockie Patterson, Kiwi vegan granddad, and I'm going to be making some sort of like Vogels bread. Vogels came out in the late 1960s. Before that, bread in New Zealand tended to be white bread or something called brown bread, which looked like white bread but was brown. And so Vogels bread was a real sort of eye-opener. And in terms of what's in it, it's pretty good. It doesn't have a lot of sort of weird ingredients. It's probably, I would imagine, the best of the kinds of breads that you might get easily in the supermarket. Anyway, let's get started. So this is about 250 mils of lukewarm water, and I'm going to be putting in a teaspoon or just under of yeast and also a teaspoon of sugar. I'll just give that a wee stir to make sure that the yeast is well mixed. Okay, so that's going to take maybe about 10 minutes, and in the meantime we will start mixing the other ingredients. So I actually found this recipe online. Didn't actually work for me that well, so I did a little bit more googling on how to do it, and I've come up with what I think is fairly foolproof way after a bit of experimentation. I've found that it's best to be 1.5 of the wholemeal and half, roughly, of the white flour. The original recipe had a mixed grain mix which they added in. I actually like mine a little bit chunkier and nuttier, so at this stage I'm putting nuts in. So these are just walnuts, and that would be I don't know, about half a cup. Now if you don't want it as chunky, you can whiz the nuts up in a food processor, but I do like it rather chunky. So there we have some chopped walnuts, and now I'm going to add some pumpkin seeds. You could chop these up, but I'm not going to, and some sunflower seeds. So you can see that that's almost a cup, and just for some smaller bits, some sesame seeds and some nigella seeds, which you don't have to use necessarily if you don't have them. They're quite nice, give little black dots in the bread. Okay, so there we have it. Mix that. Now the good thing about making your own bread is that you can determine how much salt you're going to have in it, because you don't want to have too much salt in your life. So that's about half a teaspoon. The original recipe called for 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay, so that pretty much is all the ingredients. I may need to add a little bit more water, and at a later stage I'll be using some rolled oats, just to cover the top of the loaf once it's cooking. One more thing. This is not as important, and I think if you had half and half white and wholemeal, it wouldn't, not really so necessary. I quite like to stick a bit of gluten in, just to help it develop those gluten strands. Okay, so we'll give that a bit of a mix. And this looks like it is starting to work. So we will chip it in. Now this is a no-knead bread, which is not really quite true because it does have a very minor knead at the very end. And it needs to be quite sticky at this stage, so I'm going to put a bit more water in. Maybe just a touch more. So you can see that's quite wet. Now the original recipe was very imprecise. It just said leave overnight, and it's like, well, when did you start? What time do you wake up? So looking into it, doing some research on the no-knead bread, it really needs at least 12 hours, preferably 18 hours. So it's about almost midday now. I get up fairly early, so I'll be next looking at this in the morning after I wake up. The last thing to do is to cover it and just let that rise. So it will rise quite considerably. I haven't kneaded it at all, I've just stirred the ingredients in, and I imagine it should at least double its size. Right, so I'll have a look at this tomorrow. Kia ora anō, it's morning. It's been about 18 hours since we mixed the dough up, and it's ready for the next stage. In the original recipe that I looked at, you didn't leave it to rise in a bowl. You stuck it straight into the loaf tin, and that was it. However, I found that it didn't actually rise. It rose and then it sank. So I did a little bit more research, and it appears it's far better if you proof it, i.e. you just give it a very quick knead so that it pushes the air out, and then you let it rise again, and then it's ready to cook. What we need is just a little bit of flour. So, I'm going to pull it out as best we can. It is still very sticky. And put it out onto the flour. And then we're going to just give it a very quick knead, form it into a bit of a loaf shape for a few seconds. Okay, so the next step is to stick it into one of these. So I'm scrunching up the baking paper so that it will fit into there better. Okay, so here we have it. We will dump that in, and I'll just push it into the corners so it's nice and flat. I'll just give it a little brush with some a wet brush. And the last step is to put some oatmeal over the top, some rolled oats. Okay, so we can see there, we can press them in a little bit. What we're going to do now is take a note of the time, and I'm going to cover it again. So I'm going to leave it for another 2 hours. This will give it a chance to rise up again, and then we'll cook it. Well, I'm back. It's been sitting for just over 2 hours and it's risen a little bit. So what we're going to do now is pop it in the oven. Recipes often call for about 210 degrees Celsius. I've set that 190 because it's a fan oven and cooks a little bit hotter. Okay, time to put it in. And we'll come back in about 35 to 40 minutes. Cool. Okay, so that's been about, well, over 35 minutes, maybe not quite 40. Time to pull it out and have a look. So what you can see is that it's risen up a bit more. What I'm going to do now is let it sit for about half an hour or so. Then we might just cut it open and see what it tastes like. Can't wait. Okay, the moment of truth. The loaf is looking pretty good. Just take that out. Still a little bit warm, but looking pretty good. I really like this toasted, but it is nice like this, when it's just a little bit warm. But you can also chop it up into slices and put it into a bag and freeze it if you want. That works okay. Right, let's see. Okay, so you can see there some of the nuts, and you can see the nigella seeds, and I'm going to use some of this vegan butter that I made. Just two ingredients and a slight pinch of salt. Okay, so you can see that it's starting to melt. Rather yummy. It does take time. You've got to sort of wait quite long periods between stages, but all up, the actual work required is not very much, and what you end up with is actually a really good loaf of bread. So have a go, enjoy. Ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Kia ora. As usual, finish with some kupu Māori. He paraua whakahuora tēnei. He paraua whakahuora tēnei. So this is nice and healthy bread. He maha ngā nutty me ngā kākano hoki. He maha ngā nutty me ngā kākano hoki. There's lots of nuts and seeds as well. Kaore he kai kino I roto I tēnei kai reka. Kaore he kai kino I roto I tēnei kai reka. There isn't any bad food in this delicious food. Kia ora.